administration was really keen on trying to revitalize the area. What could be done to this Kennedy Plaza and how it connects to the Riverwalk? Also, that the Riverwalk are flooding now quite regularly, and how could we think of the future of the Riverwalk? And that was a 2 years exercise, after which we published a visioning master plan. We started the project very much like we're doing it today, by asking our communities, what's in there for you? What do you want to see there? What we want us, what to us should be the future of that area. So it started like this. This is the as-built condition, and collected quite a good number of feedback. This was done through the pandemic, where everything was done through Zoom. And people complaining that they can't walk easily on a cobblestone. People saying that they would like to see more play activity, more engagement for children, more nature. Certain folks feeling quite insecure to walk there at night, and also wishing for a lot more activity on water during the day. And accessibility being kind of a big problem for the area with very limited handicap access. Our team got the drawing board, and we took a route of reimagining the area through a rewilding of the Riverwalk. Since it's flooding, we were thinking, why not cover the existing Riverwalk with dirt, and let's grow vegetation on those platforms, let the water come in and come out, and elevate some Riverwalk through that vegetation. So that was the initial kind of concept that we had for the Riverwalk. You can see some of our early sketches from our landscape architect, Stimson. And, very much in the spirit of trying to reconnect, with the Woonasquatucket Greenway, and maybe how the Cove had been hundreds or 1,000 years ago. This was the top view of our plan when we left it in 2021, and did another community engagement meeting, collected feedback. Overall, pretty positive. One element that I highlight in particular was that the connection from Kennedy Plaza to the Riverwalk was accomplished through two tunnels. And in this proposed scheme, we are visioning, in fact, an aerial bridge crossing over the parking area to connect the Riverwalk from the top rather than coming from under. Both can exist, but this will be an added access and creating a crossing of the Memorial Boulevard. And in general, you can see some of the feedback. People like the idea of creating this bridge crossing that maybe, like a little brother or sister of the pedestrian bridge at Van Listen by further down in New Point. They love the idea of rewilding the area with the vegetation, and of course, improving the accessibility in general. And that was the end of our assignment back in 2021. Some of our early renderings, really kind of imagining this whole basin as this large amphitheater could be used for large-scale events like water fire and other type of events that could be taking place there. You can see the bridge crossing over here. And then this intertwining of vegetation and promenade along the Riverwalk. Now, at the time, we hadn't spent too much time on materials and colors and design. We were more thinking in terms of like bigger moves, how to get people in and out of the area in general, what should be the height of the Riverwalk in relationship to flooding. We welcome any of your thoughts on, what you would dream to see there in terms of anything, materials, access, activities. And I will let my colleague, Derek Anderson, go a little bit more into the detail of the design, particularly when it comes to the flooding and the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. And thank you all for coming tonight. It's a real pleasure to have so many folks in the room, so many people online. Thank you, however you're joining, really appreciate it. I'm just going to speak just briefly so that we can get into some of the activities. We do have activities set up for folks online as well as in the room here. But taking from Alvin's point here on the previous project, and what I want to do is focus on what we're up to next. So just for context, this is the study area of that previous project that we worked on that ended in 2021 with a 30% design plan. And what we're doing now over the next few years as we advance that work, focuses on this area on the screen. So in the yellow area there, we're really focusing in on the river walks with this project and the water place basin area. As far as our objectives, we're really looking to preserve and rehabilitate what people do love about this space. There's a lot of great out there that we want to make sure that we're connecting with and rehabilitating those spaces that maybe need a little bit of care, but keeping a lot of what we do love about this space while also expanding the ability for placemaking and programming to support day-to-day events as well as larger scale events in this area. Improving safety, increasing use of the area, and providing connectivity and accessibility to and through the Riverwalk area from east and west, as well as north and south Kennedy Plaza into the area and so on. And then finally, creating ecological benefits and resiliency for the Riverwalk and the events that happen there, as well as for the surrounding neighborhoods. Our scope of work consists of continuing this engagement, this conversation with you all that starts here tonight and will continue through the project. We'll be doing field investigations and surveying to verify some of the assumptions from the previous 30% design, advancing permits and approvals to get approvals for the project. And really where we're taking this, we're advancing those previous 30% designs. We're not starting over here, but we have a point here to take those 30% designs, hear your feedback, verify some of our assumptions, and then advance those in detail to 100% designs that we can go out to bid. The timeline here, we're looking at this fall. Really, you might start seeing folks out on site doing some test pits, doing some surveys and so on. We're going to be verifying our assumptions from the previous 30% design, including with conversations with you all. Next year in the spring, we'll update those previous 30% design plans to incorporate what we found here in the fall and through the winter. Starting to submit permit applications, and we'll have more public meetings to hear back from you again as we start to evolve these plans. Fall of next year, we'll have 60% design plans, more public meetings to again touch base with you all. And then 2026, 90% plans, a lot of permitting work at that stage, which will then roll into the final 100% documents to go out to bid in 2027. I'm just going to touch briefly and show some images, some renderings from the previous 30% design plan. There's nothing new here if you attended the previous meetings, but I want to just refresh folks on what this project is looking to accomplish. So we'll talk through some of the elements of the project. Just generally, if you see up on the top left of the screen there, we're looking at a new ramp connection from that higher elevation of Francis and Finance Streets, bringing folks down into the lower Riverwalks with a new accessible connection. Expanding out the amphitheater seating around the basin area, creating more space for improved activities and events around the basin. Modifying the bridge connection, the pedestrian bridge over the river, to elevate that up to the Memorial Boulevard grade so that people can easily come into the site from Memorial Boulevard. And we'll reinforce that with a new mid-block crosswalk on Memorial Boulevard that we look to signalize that there's a safe crossing there. Connecting into what we're calling here the Riverwalk connector. This is a new elevated bridge type structure over the parking lot. So really bringing people in from Kennedy Plaza to the Riverwalk space in a really accessible pathway. Over to the right, we're looking at elevating those Riverwalks and improving accessibility for folks, between that pedestrian bridge over the river all the way down to Steeple Street, and continuing some bike accessibility along Memorial Boulevard. Focusing in on the river basin area. Here's an image of the river basin. This is a flood event that happens somewhat frequently. We do see flooding out there a couple times a month today. And this image over on the bottom right of the screen, I want to bring your attention to. What we're looking at here is a section cut through the Riverwalk. So you can see the Riverwalks down here at about elevation 4. And what we're looking at with flooding is by the 2050s, we're looking at this level here. None of this is storm event flooding, by the way. This is all tidal. So what we're looking at here is daily water from high tide about 1.5 feet above those Riverwalks by the 2050s. And our less frequent events are what we call in the industry highest astronomical tides, things like king tides, those maybe every 6 to 8 weeks tidal events, getting up maybe 3 feet above those river walks. So if we think about how we use this space today and how we want to use it in the future, how we need to be able to access these areas, this is what we're really trying to address, is keeping our feet dry on a daily basis on those river walks, and how we can still have a river walk in a basin area that we love and supports all the ways that we use it and want to use it. So what we're looking at doing, the existing river walk at the basin is there on the left, and over on the right is a rendering from a previous 30% design, elevating those river walks up out of the flooding area a bit, expanding the amphitheater seating to support improved expanded events. As we look at the center of the project area, we'll be, as I mentioned, modifying the existing bridge over the river, new mid-block crossing of Memorial Boulevard, and an elevated bridge structure over the parking lot. The next picture is going to show a cut through this area here. So you can see if you were walking from Kennedy Plaza up to Exchange Terrace today, you probably need to be going up and down a bunch of stairs. There's not really a great accessible way to get there. And what we plan to do is put in this new bridge connector over the parking lot, mid-block crossing of Memorial Boulevard, and then elevating the surface of the bridge over the river there, so that there's an even level surface, bringing people in, very accessible to the river space, and then gently bringing them down to the elevation of those river walks. Picture on the top is look at that pedestrian bridge today. You can see it's disconnected from Memorial Boulevard in grade, and in the future we're raising that surface up, so it'll be an at-grade connection, widening out that space for more activities and to support better access into the basin. And this is an image, a rendering of what the pedestrian bridge structure over the parking lot was envisioned to look like, providing great accessibility for folks of all abilities to come into the river block. And then finally, last quick slides, and we'll get into some activities here and really look to hear from you all. The southern part of the area, from the bridge over the pedestrian bridge over the river all the way down to Steeple Street, we're looking to do 2 things here. One is better accessibility for folks of all modes of transit, so looking at better pedestrian accessibility in and out of the river walks and in the east-west direction, as well as folks on bikes along Memorial Boulevard. And also, again, looking to elevate those river walks up out of the flooding. So this image just shows in green some of the existing urban trail network in the area. You can see the Woonasquatucket Greenway over at the top left, Exchange Street bike lanes there in green, and then Canal Street over on the right, also a little disconnected. And what we're proposing to do is create new accessible paths, kind of shown in red there, that are really going to connect a lot of these pieces together, make those a really interconnected urban trail through and to this area east-west, as well as north-south from Kennedy Plaza up to the train stations, and making all those walkways really accessible for folks and really usable as we bring people to this space. And just last slide here, some renderings of what those river walks would look like in that area. So just elevating them up a bit above the existing river walks, and then planting within the area to bring in more ecological habitats, really create this river ecosystem that's really thriving for both people and our environment that we live within. So with that, I'll just note, those are all renderings from the previous 30% design. It doesn't end with those. We're looking to continue to develop those plans with you all. So we'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts, what you like, what you don't like. We want to hear it all tonight, and there'll be many opportunities to hear again. With that, I'm going to pass over to Manuel as we kick off our activity stations.
Thank you, Derek and Alvin. I want to take this opportunity to mention, I think you noticed at the beginning that we were welcoming folks online. There are about 40 to 50 people online following this meeting, so that's exciting as well. For those of you who are here in person, we're about to kind of jump into this open house portion of the meeting. For those of you online, we are also formatting this in such a way that you will also be able to go through the same activity stations that the folks here in the room will be doing. The slide on your screens and in front of you right now is basically highlighting the activity stations. I think many of you saw them as you were coming in. They include an overview slide, basically starting here on the left side of the room. And then as we move across, we'll cover accessibility and mobility. So how do we move through the site currently? How do we want to move through the site, and what does that look like? What does it look like for somebody pushing a stroller, somebody on a bike, somebody on a scooter? Is that something that you want or don't want? What are the points of entry, connection, and visibility currently? And what might they be in the future to better connect this to other parts of the city? A key component of this, as Derek just mentioned, is this question of the balance between resiliency and thinking about the future of possible flooding at the site, and balancing it with the desire for connection to the water. The next category we broke into two because there's a lot there. It's basically use, programming, and activation. So how do we currently activate the site? And how might we activate the site in the future? And so there's a lot of good examples of what we're currently doing. And we also want to hear about what we might do in the future. And then the last category is the natural environment and urban ecology, just learning a little bit about the types of habitats, species that are currently there. How can we support them? What would you like to see at the site? And again, number 6 is way over here. So you can kind of move across the room. You do not have to do it in any particular order, so move as you please through the room. And for those of you online, similarly, you'll be on a mural board, which you can do at your own pace, or you can follow along with the facilitator in the breakout rooms shortly. So with that, and if there are no questions about this, I'll kind of open it up and have the open house portion of the meeting. Let me just, before I do that, just point out at the project overview station, we're going to have, at each of the stations, we're going to have a team member. So I'm just going to point them out so you know who's there. So at the project overview station, Anna Behesti is going to be joining you from the Arab team. At the accessibility and mobility, David Green from the Arab team.
Back.
And connectivity and visibility, Gideon Fink. In the resilience and connection to the water, we'll have Derek Anderson, who spoke to you a moment ago, and Gracie Meek. Programming and activation, Alban Maswet. And the natural environment and ecology, Zoe Holland. We will also have members of the planning team, Jess and Director Mulligan in the room, and they'll be around and available to answer questions. And for those of you who are online, you will also have your facilitators there, including Michael Guthrie, Jordan Whitehead, and Greg Tuzolo, in addition to Chris Martin from the planning office who will be joining us. Oh, and actually here in the room, we also have Tim Shea from the planning team. So with that, and are there any questions about what you are doing or what you're about to do? All right. If anybody needs, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, my apologies. Spanish interpretation, there is a Spanish interpreter in the room behind the board number 5.1. And for those of you online, there is an interpreter also available and will be assigned to the breakout room. So just identify yourself to Lexi Walensky, the host. And with that, I invite you to share your feedback with us. Thank you. And stick around to the end if you want to hear the wrap up. We'll do a wrap up about 15 minutes to 7. So there's about 40 minutes.
Number one.
Okay, so we are going to enter breakout rooms at this point. So I will be creating one breakout room and sending half of you there. And actually, I'm going to make two breakout rooms, and then I'm going to move people into the breakout rooms. So co-hosts, bear with me while I create the rooms. And before we create the rooms, I'm going to add a link into the chat. So if you all want to join us on the Miro board, you can follow along. here. Okay, here we go. Okay, and co-hosts, I believe you should be able to add yourself to a room. So I think 2 of you are going in one room and 2 are going in the other. I am also now allowing everybody to unmute themselves.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so I believe we have are you so I have Michael going to one room.
Lexi, can you send me there? I'm not sure how to put myself there.
Yeah. I thought it would give you the option, but it doesn't look like it will. Okay, so I'm gonna send okay, Greg, I'm sending you to one room, and then Michael, I'm going to send you to the other room. Okay. Okay, you should have an invite now.
Okay, I'll go ahead and join the one with Greg. So, thanks, Leslie.
Yep, no problem. Okay, at this point, everyone should have an invite to join a breakout room. So if you're still with us, go ahead and join one of those.
So, we're not just throwing a crosswalk over Memorial Boulevard and calling it a day. It's putting a crosswalk there, adding signals, looking at the geometry and designing something that would be safer to cross.
The second traffic jams?
So that's, the team is doing traffic studies. So that's something that will definitely be taken into consideration.
The second part of my question commentary involved
Also, under the project goals, there is a QR code that leads you to a brief little survey just to answer a few questions. And I guess as people are,
Michael, did you want to talk to that a little bit?
I was just gonna say this is great discussion. But for those who maybe aren't familiar with Miro and just being able to participate in things while the discussion is happening, is it worthwhile, kind of doing a share screen and a little bit of a tutorial to help people that are looking to kind of engage or write some things while discussion is happening, maybe as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Should I do that?
Yeah, because sorry, I thought you were offering. Yes,
I
yes,
just
could you
threw
please?
that out there, and then I was like,
Yeah.
maybe I should do it myself. So let me share my screen here. All right, is everybody seeing that okay?
Yeah.
Great. So you may see a number of people already participating. As people move around, you can see their cursors and it has their names associated with it. Hopefully you can see mine. It should say Michael on the screen, or if you're seeing my screen, I'm actually the white arrow that's circling the number 1 here. So a way to think about engaging in these, there's an overall question that goes along with these. It's usually in pink or something to do with project goals here. So one thing you can do is actually take your phone and QR code scan, just like you did menus during COVID. And there's a question to answer on every board as kind of a primary way to engage. A more detailed way to engage is you can see these Post-its that are essentially here. And at any time, you could kind of double click into one. And maybe I want to say a comment, or maybe I want to include a suggestion. I'm just going to put a comment so I don't taint people's opinions about things. I did not realize how large the basin was, right? So
forth, and it's really can be a very self-guided experience. Maybe we can facilitate a bit, Jordan, by like moving from to the next board and talk a little bit about what that's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Calling for.
Related to accessibility and mobility around the site. This one really just looking to hear from everyone in terms of how they currently access the site for a starting point, and then really looking at different ways that you'd like to move through the site that you would envision to be beneficial to the project itself, or just a little more convenient or efficient. So these images here serve more of kind of a provocation to help kind of give you a little bit of a thought process of what might be opportunities for improvement there. And then also down at the bottom, looking.
Should be able to, oh, I seem to be frozen here. Well, if you generally, let me see if I can, yeah, my whole internet is kind of frozen, but at least I'm still on the call. You can pan to the right and see the other board. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can fix my access to the Miro board, and hopefully that's helpful for people. Feel free to ask any questions too on using things.
Could I return to the presentation, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah. So as the group were introducing the project and describing some of the concerns that residents and citizens have voiced, they talked about things that the new design process is addressing, such as safety, accessibility, the flooding, footing on the walkways, adding natural elements, and so on. One of the things they mentioned was lighting, but I didn't hear anything further about that. Will new lighting be part of the solution somehow?
Yeah, that is something that is part of this for sure. new lighting within the basin, new lighting along the pedestrian connection. And as my boss Joe Mulligan had mentioned in the meeting, there is a separate downtown illumination project happening that this will tie into at some point. Well, they'll at least talk together. So yeah, there will be emphasis on lighting as well.
I see, thank you.
You're
And another question, we heard a lot about the flooding, both the naturally recurring tidal flooding and then extraordinary events, storms and so on. And it's good to see the thought that's being given to all of that. The solutions that were described tend to be above the surface, which we're obviously all concerned with, so that's good. My question is about what's happening under the water, and in particular, what about the stability of the ground in the cove area, all the way at the bottom where the water is, and also for people who live in the water place buildings, we're certainly concerned about what's happening under the ground with regard to water potentially seeping in and around the building, in that basement garage and so on. Has that been part of the study? Do we have projections about the water activity beneath the surface?
I don't know what information we have on that currently, but I think that will be part of the investigations and the surveys as we go forward in this part of the process.
Thank you, because I know even for people who don't reside in the buildings, when the silt builds up in the cove, that dredging is always a concern. So some aspect of the project that could address the reasons for that and have some kind of deliberate planning for preventing it or frequencies of maintenance, whatever it might involve.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely an issue we've heard, especially from the riverboat folks who were on the water all the time and have seen the effects of the recent dredging and what is left of it, I guess, because the dredging happened, but then silt is still piling up. So that's a question that we need to ask, and how do we address that for sure.
Thank you.
Chris, if I could interject on that question, one thing to keep in mind about that entire area, and I mean the entirety of that area and downtown Providence, is all filled. The cove was a massive area 400 years ago, and they filled it in gradually over the last 400 years, and all of that land, it was wetlands. So at some level, it's all wet underneath it. And I don't think there's anything that can be done about that unless you raise it all up physically.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Width, height, lighting, and just clearances, and especially when you factor in the rising elevation of the water, it's been difficult to see how to work with those existing constraints, especially given that the bridge itself is a state bridge, and any kind of structural improvements to the bridge are, we're excluding that as a possibility. So it's a major challenge, and I totally hear what you're saying. I think it is absolutely true that the success of this project, I think, will rely on the best possible.
So let me try to share my screen once again. Hopefully I have better luck this time and it doesn't blow me out again. But this is one of the boards that has to do with accessibility. So if it's okay with you, what I'm going to do is see these red dots that are here.
Yes.
Kind of indicate location of where you would like to have something. So there's a spot here for a wheelchair. So I'm gonna, at some point, if I can grab this thing.
Yeah,
I'm
my
actually
mind.
gonna.
It's hard for me to do this.
No, it's totally fine. So that's why we wanted to provide the assistance. I'm actually going to ask my colleague Ali Reza, because I seem to be having technical difficulties. So Ali Reza, if you could grab one of the dots and make sure that we cover it into wheelchair access.
Rink into the basin is totally changing. That's part of our assumption, and it's also very much out of our scope and out of our control. So the ability for the public to access the southern end of the Memorial Boulevard tunnel, as they may currently do, is going to be a challenge going into the future. And so that has pushed us to think about the street elevation as our major point of connection. Again, that's a series of assumptions that have been led to at this point, and I certainly appreciate your feedback that making those at-grade crossings safe and pleasant without traffic, et cetera, is a serious challenge. And but again, I think that it's really going to rely on the best kind of traffic calming and streetscape design that we can muster up.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that? I was just thinking of when you were talking about, I'm Lisa Arecki, I'm with the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa.
And I don't know if there's other specific questions too. Chris has been doing a great job to be able to facilitate and answer from the city. We're one of the consultant teams, so I never really got a chance to introduce myself to this group, but I'm Michael with Inform Studio, working with Eric on this. And so I can continue to hopefully scroll over and look at other boards as well, to help people in looking at different aspects of content that we're hoping to share and get some points about. This one has to do with point of entry and connection. So there's a section to the far left where you can grab arrows and or dots to talk about where you would want to come in terms of a point of entry, and where you believe important viewpoints might be. So that could be both existing and potentially new. If you follow the screen a little bit, you can really zoom in and get a little bit closer. So there's some information about where there's currently stairs. Maybe you feel like there need to be stairs or an accessible path to reach the bottom as well. So you can provide notes, which you can see somebody put one up here. Cannot see the basin from Memorial Boulevard because of concrete wall. Great note. So maybe a viewpoint along Memorial Boulevard would be something that you feel like is really important, and we can include that as a viewpoint. The other thing that I'd really encourage people to look at that I think we're trying to get some feedback on is what types of spaces would feel most comfortable and welcoming at the Riverwalk. So there's a combination of different spaces, some that have a little bit blend of urban and natural, some that are a little bit more naturalized. But some of these are a little bit wider and there's a little bit more visibility. Some of them are more intimate, but there's not as much visibility. So, I mean, some people are familiar with the Van Leesten Memorial Bridge, which I think is showing something more along the lines of a very public, very open, kind of high active gathering space where there's a lot of visibility, as opposed to some of the Riverwalk areas that are a little bit more narrow and intimate, but it has privacy, but it comes both ways. So it would be great to get commentary on what should be preserved, what should be changed relative to type of visibility, and what feels like, as in the question, safety and visibility with the desire for comfort and refuge. What sort of works better? So that's another one that would be great to get some comments on. I'll kind of pause for a second. Does anybody have questions or anything they want to add in?
I was just going to say, my name is Michelle Jalbert. I'm actually here from Providence Resilience Partnership on the resilience issues, but I'm also looking at this and just thinking for especially women walking at night, tunnels are a little less appealing than a lot of things. So just to think about that aspect of it, as you're doing the
Is for pocket, I'm seeing some kind of, I don't know if that's a beach or, you've seen in Europe places that they do these barges or beach areas to kind of just.
And we'll be sure to get it in here.
One other thing to add another layer of technology to this whole interaction we're having tonight. You see that QR code on your screen, and each of these boards has a QR code. If you point your phone's camera at that QR code, there are some other questions that we're asking, kind of just like in a poll for each of these boards. So feel free to check that out as well.
That's a great point. And for those of you who haven't been able to get it on Miro, what I will do is kind of scan back. So if you want to go ahead and take a picture of it now to be able to get on for this one, which is about the Memorial Boulevard Tunnel. And then I will go back to accessibility and mobility. This one's really about bicycle usage. So if you're not really a bicyclist, don't think you have to comment on this one. And I will go back to number 1, which I think this is this would be a great one to get participation in for the project goals. And you'll see the listing of the project goals that are up here. And if you go on that QR code, it'll give you the opportunity to sort of click on those. I'll sit on this one for a bit. Go ahead, Richard.
Nothing. No, sorry. Mute myself.
Anybody need me to stay on this one, or I'll move to number 4. Great.
And
Mark, did you have something to say? No question?
yeah, sorry, I had to fix the microphone, but
oh, no worries.
So I'm Mark with the Woonasquatucket River Watershed. I think the big thing for us, I know, is going to be the connection between the PK project and Water Place, and I think the project limits for PK, and then it looks like the project limits for Water Place kind of neither of them really include that area under them all. So I wasn't sure if that was just because of the fact that it's the basin and not necessarily kind of the area outside of the basin, or if it was just I know I personally have not been able to figure out who owns that property because it's like the mall, the state, the city. So I'm not sure if that might be kind of one of the constraints for working in that area.
Yeah, so our scope does not go over Francis Street to that connection, unfortunately. That is something that separately the city is trying to address. Like you said, there's a lot of complicated ownership around there between the mall, the city, Amtrak, and RIDOT. So yeah, it's a major challenge. One of the things that we are thinking about, though, while it's not that connection underneath, it's still trying to make, when you get
that will allow this place to be, well, I should say it will increase the likelihood that it's maintained, decrease the burden on the city staff, et cetera. So it's absolutely consideration. And, I'd say that to one of your earlier points about activation and programming, you're right. On the south side of the river, the opportunities for, including commercial activity are pretty tight. There's not a lot of space. On the north side, I'd say, is a different story. There are other opportunities that we've been talking about, even if they are somewhat sort of far-fetched, well into the future. There's a parking lot with really good access for food trucks, with really good access for temporary you know, activities, tents and festival venues, things like that. There are some adjacent private buildings that have potentially some fit out space that could.
Okay, let me try. All right, can you see my mural board?
Sure can.
All right. So Michael, I'm happy to hold it here if you want to kind of just talk about it, and then we can both answer questions as needed or record as needed.
Yeah, sure thing. So I think this is another one where the QR code, if you do have your phone, maybe, zooming in a little bit. Actually, I noticed when I screen over this now, you can see my name here. So that's another one to go ahead and photograph, and that's going to give you information related to the Riverwalk occasionally flooding. And then to the right is a water access aspect. Like Derek really walked through this top diagram a little bit more just to illustrate over time that we're seeing some flooding of the Riverwalk now, but that will increase over time. And so there will be the continued evaluation at what level the Riverwalk should be. But something that would be helpful is to get a feeling for how do you want to connect with the river. So there's a series of visuals, kayaking and sort of pulling up to the edge, something that is a little bit more naturalized and not as much getting access to the water all the way to the right. The ability to almost like put your feet in or close to it. It's kind of a beachy scene as opposed to a more of an estuary scene. And I don't think this is necessarily a only one or the other. It can be an and both for some different areas. So feel free to grab a red dot and put it in one or many of the different areas, in terms of, yeah, that seems like a really appealing and interesting idea for how to engage with the waterfront as well.
Can you move some red dots for me since I'm on my phone and I can't seem to do it?
Yeah, I can do that for you. So describe your picture and where you want to move it.
How about the picture of my kayaks?
Your kayaks, look at that.
Yeah.
Are you in one of those?
No, but they're in my front yard. And then I think the more walkway looking one further to the left and down with people sitting on a boardwalk along the water, I think that's a great one. The ones that don't appeal to me are the ones where people can actually put their bodies in the water, because I don't think the river's ready for that yet.
So can you see where I'm putting this?
Yeah, that's a good one. And then the two to the right of that one are both good as well. I like both of those.
Yeah, I think you meant bottom and middle.
Yeah, both of those, all three of those pictures I like.
And I think right now, Chris, the perception of how dirty that water is, whether it's true or not, we hear it every day. Oh, that water's disgusting. I would never want to kayak on that river. The water's actually cleaner than it's been in 150 years, right?
Easily.
So people don't understand that it isn't that bad, but I think the perception is longstanding, and I think that's going to take a long time for people to want to actually put their feet in the water.
I think also, to take a cue from other parts of the parkway, the Providence River Park, there are lots of historical information boards along the walkway up and down the river, which are fantastic and have lots of data. I would love to see some of those address environmental concerns. And people ask me all the time, what's in the river? And there's lots of life in the river as well. None of that's addressed anywhere in a public forum along the river for people to see or talk about or read. So those are some of the things I think could be added to help make this a more enlightening experience for people who think the river is dead and disgusting, which it really isn't.
So signage. So you're talking about signage that addresses the ecology of the river or
Yeah,
like,
the ecology and what's actually in what life. I mean, a lot of the
Chris, if you pull
signage
to the left,
addresses.
I kind of put a note for that, and
oh, sorry.
maybe
Okay.
you can
Oh,
let
I
us.
see you. I see you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm
read that and let me know if that's appropriate. I don't know if you
Let me
can
see.
zoom in there
I'm
yet a
having
little bit.
trouble seeing it. Yeah, I'm having
It
trouble
says
seeing it
lots
with
of
my phone
historical
here.
signage would be great to include ecological information.
Ecological and yeah, as far as the cleanliness and the animal life in and around the river.
Okay.
Because people are shocked when I point out that there's a blue heron walking along the river eating fish. Like
Mhm.
that's not something you expect to see in an urban environment, but they're there every day.
Or an
Yeah.
oyster on the
Yeah,
wall.
or oysters on the bridge abutments, or blue crabs swimming by, or eels, which are there all summer. No one
Yeah.
expects to see that. There's diamondback terrapins, which are endangered. Then and their colony from Barrington is spread up into Providence. I see them all the time in the river.
Wow.
You know,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So,
I'm not feeling the aesthetic, frankly.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate those comments, Mike.
I don't know if you can hear me too. I agree and disagree what Mike was saying about I'm a resident. I live in Kennedy Plaza. I have an access. Normally, I went to that side when I went to the restaurant River Social. It's called now Bistro Social, something like that. The only time in my entire 8 years that I have living here in Providence was when I went there for brunch. Most of the times when you're walking around these areas where you want to pass through Union Station, have been closed for almost 8 years. The ideas in terms of adding platforms and extension and widen around the paths or prevent for resiliation in terms of the water levels, I think this is a very good idea. Most of the time, the people who walk with me, we we feel that the place is very bored. It's very interesting, very mystery, but it doesn't have any more expectation, any art, any more commercial places than only the bistro social. I think this platform with wire up a little bit the paths, making it looks a little more accessible. The other thing that I feel that is, and seeing these amazing diagrams and the step by step, the accessibility is also a problem. You can have access to Union Station, but in realistic tokens, like you don't go to that way. You go.
I'm noticing it works much better for me when I'm not sharing my screen. Thanks, Chris.
happy to help.
So then there's a fair amount of commentary or opportunity to make notes. Waterfire is obviously the really well-known programming that's happening here. I think maybe, hey, if there's some comments that can further support Waterfire is great. Like what other things could be considered in an infrastructural level to make sure that it supports it. But also thinking about this from hey, a day-to-day quality of place that people can go to. What are some programming, thoughts or ideas that you feel like should be considered? That could be, okay, organized events. And so maybe it takes, some different groups to be able to provide that a little bit like what Waterfire does, but also other programming type of things that could just be there that aren't necessarily require somebody to come in and program something specifically like an event. Just kind of zooming in on, go ahead.
I'll jump in here again. One of the things I think, and I hate to phrase it in this way, but a little bit of commercialization along the river, allowing some rentable or buyable properties that small mini kiosks or storefronts could occupy. One that would minimize crime just by having those people living and using in the river all the time on the riverfront more often instead of having these big empty dead zones all day long. I think that would bring more vibrancy and more throughput to the riverfront. I think about when I go to, like, say I go to New York or Boston, especially during the holidays, they have these big mini villages of kiosks that you can walk through, and they're incredibly vibrant and active places, and they're in the city parks. But something like that along the river in a more, maybe in a more permanent structure might be advantageous to us, to help move people into that area to see those things and explore those things, but also to keep crime and vagrancy out of there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
has there been any
anybody
thought on that, Chris? Like a Bryant Park kind of thing?
that's not what my office necessarily thinks about broadly, but as we're talking about the Water Place Park, I think it's something that we should be considering, that could be done there, for sure. And like, what can we do to help facilitate that? Um, I'm curious about the programming side of it. Skyline, I think, is kind of like a elephant in the room here, and what happens there. There is that question that will be posed soon, given the current state of that space. Does that get activated in a different way? I think very close by, there's going to be the new food hall that will be a big draw to not necessarily the basin, but directly adjacent to the basin. And how do we complement that within the space? I'm curious if anybody in the room partook in or checked out the food carts that Parks did down there I think it was last summer. It seems sort of short-lived, but I thought it was a great idea. I went down there a couple times for some lunch. It was a fun activation of the space when they did it. And I'd love to see something like that again. But curious if anybody else had any thoughts on things like that.
So obviously we actually went and checked out all the carts and partook of some of the vending there, and it was a great idea. And then, like you said, short-lived. I just don't think that the traffic flow through the area justifies their existence currently, and that's the thing that needs to be fixed, obviously, which is a part of all this big project.
Yeah.
If you have a cart there and nobody's walking by it, what's the point? So you talk about the Skyline building and it is as an elephant in the room. If that was no longer a event venue / nightclub / restaurant, if it turned into a facility with multiple businesses in it, perhaps by floor or by division, that might be more advantageous to the whole area, especially things that were available during the day. Because during the day it's a dead zone. Then at night they fire up events and it's loud, and some of the neighbors don't like that. That could be changed in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Looks like we're closing the breakout rooms right now. If you are on Menti, if you do have it open, there is one more board left, and we have a couple seconds here to talk about current use and programming and activation. So talking about like art, public art, installations, things like that. If you want me to throw some red dots in the next 30 seconds, let me know. Because I think this is a real key piece of that, keeping it activated daily as opposed to
urban space. And so can you check with Lexi if they can hear us?
All right, welcome everybody. Excellent. So it looks like we're back in the room and everybody online is also joining us. So thank you. I'd like to take just a quick moment to have each of the board activity leaders give us a really brief kind of synopsis of what you heard at your station. So I'll start with station number 1, Anna.
Sure. So station number 1 was more about the project bounds and the scope of the site. So we heard a lot about people wanting their goals. They really like the idea of more connectivity, historical preservation along the waterfront, keeping it in mind that it's an urban area. Yeah, heard a lot about also how people are commuting to the site from home. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And then I think we have David with accessibility and mobility. David Green.
So this was very interesting because we had a lot of comments about the same areas, but from different points of view. And the three big areas that came up were the crosswalk on Memorial. Some people hated it, some people loved it, which is interesting. And then just the different ways to deal with the Riverwalk itself and the materiality of that and the level of it and the way we deal with the flooding issues and who can occupy it, who can use it, whether it's limited to pedestrians or it's more multimodal. Again, there was a range of different views, which was kind of interesting. And then materials, should this be something that's very soft and vegetated with lots of trees, or should it be something that's very hard and urban? Well, we got both comments across the board. So we got a great range of comments that we're really going to have to look at hard now. So thank you.
All right, and now we'll go to connectivity and visibility. Gideon.
Thanks. We had a lot of enthusiasm for parts of the Riverwalk where people like the way that the space feels, as well as other precedents like the Van Leesten Bridge. We also asked about the tunnel under Memorial Boulevard, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for finding new uses and identities for that space.
Excellent, thank you. So resilience and connection to the water, Derek Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, we had some great conversations around resilience and connections. I think some of the themes that we picked up, there are a number of private properties along the edge of the river that we need to really be careful to think about how modifications to the Riverwalk will impact those buildings and the people who are using those spaces. So that's something we're really going to make sure to be connecting with those folks through this project and thinking about that carefully. We heard, certainly a number of folks recommending softer edges, softer materials, more vegetation. There was a lot of support around that. In general, also a lot of comments about maintenance and trash coming down the river during rain events, picking up on the river walks, and choosing designs and materials that can minimize the amount of maintenance that needs to happen, really providing long life, durable materials that can deal with the kind of environment that we're in there. And then a number of reflections on the elevation of the Riverwalk and what it needs to be over time as we deal with water while making sure that we're still connected and providing the infrastructure we need for the events that we hold in those spaces today.
Thank you very much. Programming and activation, Alvin Bessel.
Thanks, there was a lot being said. A few things to note. Some residents in the condominium that are adjacent of the Riverwalk were in fact interested in slowing down the traffic on Memorial Boulevard so that it would reduce the impact of noise of some folks speeding up on the boulevard. That was an interesting note. General comments that most folks are looking for some more daily play and activities along the water. Wish for more vegetations and more grass, bring their dog. Better access, particularly to Francis towards the mall and CVS, which is very difficult at the moment. More food vendors, maybe how to use the space under the tunnel for that. And a wonderful comment of let's bring back the swans.
And that is the perfect segue to nature, environment, and ecology. Zoe Holland.
Yeah, so there was a lot of enthusiasm about bringing wildlife to the space and supporting habitats, specifically birds, swans, and turtles. Habitat support strategies specifically that people were excited about were floating wetlands and any sort of litter collecting mechanism along the river. As well as we asked about potential sort of landscape character and habitats along the riverbank that people were interested in. Particularly, there was interest in tidal marshes and the sort of the woodland stream character that exists upstream, as well as excited about street trees, shade, and environmental education and stewardship. So it's great to hear about that.
Excellent, thank you. I know that there's even more on the boards. I know that some of you scanned the QR code, so thank you. With all of that information, we'll gather it, we'll distill it, we'll share it back with you at future meetings to make sure that it captures the themes that we heard. And we'll share with you how it has informed the design as it moves forward. So we really appreciate your time this evening. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jess Lance to close us out. And I also, let me just thank the team online. I know that they're wrapping up on their end, but they had some really great discussions. I've been kind of following it on my phone. So thank you, all of you online, including our facilitators, and Chris Martin, who's online representing the city.
Thanks, Manuel. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jess Lance. I'm the Director of Special Projects for the Department of Planning and Development here in Providence, overseeing the team that is managing this project. I was the project manager for the original project back in 2020, so it's good to see a lot of this going forward, and I'm really excited that you're all here tonight, both in person and online, and reconvening and seeing what we've been up to and what we're going to be doing going forward. So thank you for that, and thank you for your continued participation throughout. Just want to note again, Chris Martin, he's a planner on my team. His email address is up here on the screen. It's crmartin@providenceri.gov. He's going to be the best day-to-day point of contact. If you have any other questions that come up, after tonight, if you're thinking about what you've heard and what we talked about today, he's going to be your best point of contact if you have anything else coming up. So feel free to reach out to any of us at the planning department with further questions, thoughts, anything like that. And with that, I think, again, just thank you all for coming out tonight, and we look forward to continuing to see you coming to these meetings going forward. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.